A quiet arrival. The airport bustled with the hum of hurried travelers, rolling suitcases, and the echo of flight announcements. Monica Adwale adjusted the strap of her elegant handbag, her dark eyes scanning the terminal with a calm determination. She stood out, not for her appearance, but for the quiet grace with which she moved, a magnetism that demanded attention without seeking it. Her outfit was impeccably tailored, a deep navy blazer over a white blouse, paired with slacks that highlighted her professional demeanor. Around her neck, a vibrant silk scarf with intricate gold and crimson patterns caught the light, an unmistakable touch of her Nigerian heritage. Her natural hair was styled into a neat twist-out that framed her strong features, further accentuating her commanding presence. This trip was different from the dozens of others Monica had taken for work and leisure. Today, she wasn't just another traveler heading to a meeting or conference. Today, she was en route to officially step into her new role as CEO of a multinational tech firm, a position she had fought for with relentless effort and unyielding determination. The opportunity was monumental, not just for her, but for the countless others who would see her as a symbol of what was possible. Monica paused at the entrance to the terminal, the glass facade reflecting the early morning light. Her heart was steady, her mind clear. The challenges ahead loomed large, but Monica had never been one to shy away from adversity. She took a deep breath, the scent of jet fuel and coffee filling her senses, and strode inside with purpose. The encounter. As Monica entered the priority check-in line, she couldn't help but notice the casual indifference of the staff behind the counter. Lisa, a young woman with sharp blonde hair, was busy texting on her phone, while Mike, her coworker, leaned against the counter, his tie loosened as though he had already resigned himself to the monotony of the day. Their postures spoke volumes about their attitudes. Monica stepped forward, her first-class ticket and passport in hand. "Good morning," she said, her rich accent carrying a tone of warmth and authority. Lisa glanced up from her phone, her expression instantly changing. A flicker of surprise flashed in her eyes before being masked by a smile that didn't quite reach them. "First class, huh?" Lisa muttered, scanning the ticket. Her tone was dismissive, almost mocking. Monica met her gaze with unwavering calm. "That's correct," she replied, her voice steady. Lisa's fingers tapped on the keyboard with exaggerated slowness, her movements deliberate. Mike leaned over, feigning interest. "Looks like everything checks out," he said with mock seriousness, his smirk barely concealed. Monica held her composure, allowing the moment to pass without reaction. Years of enduring subtle slights had taught her to choose her battles wisely. She thanked them and moved on, her steps deliberate, her posture unshaken. Random screening. Monica's progress was halted at the security checkpoint. A guard stepped forward, singling her out with a brisk wave. "Random screening," he said, his tone clipped but devoid of hostility. Monica complied without hesitation, placing her handbag and belongings into the trays. She removed her scarf, watch, and shoes with practiced ease, her movements betraying no irritation. The guard rummaged through her bag, pausing when he encountered a leather-bound notebook. "Fancy," he remarked, opening it to reveal its meticulously written pages. "It's my journal," Monica replied, her tone polite but firm. The guard nodded absently, closing the notebook and waving her through. Monica reassembled her belongings with care, her scarf draping over her shoulders like armor. She walked away without looking back, her mind focused on the journey ahead. At the boarding gate. The gate was already crowded when Monica arrived. She found a quiet seat near the window, her notebook open on her lap. Writing had always been her refuge, a place to channel her thoughts and emotions. Her pen moved across the page in fluid strokes as she reflected on the interactions she just endured. Monica didn't write about the disdain or mockery. Those moments were too familiar to dwell on. Instead, she wrote about the future she envisioned. A world where people like her were judged by their achievements and character, not their accents or skin color. Her reverie was interrupted by the boarding announcement. As a first-class passenger, Monica was among the first to board. She approached the desk with the same measured grace as before, her suitcase gliding silently behind her. Lisa and Mike were still at the counter, their expressions shifting as they saw her approach. Lisa's smile was tight, forced. "Good evening," she said, scanning Monica's boarding pass with a quick motion. Monica thanked her and walked on without another word. Behind her, she heard Lisa whisper, "Bet she's never flown first class before." Mike chuckled, probably using her boss's points. Monica didn't flinch. She had learned long ago that dignity couldn't be dictated by the opinions of others. First-class cabin. The first-class cabin was a sanctuary of quiet luxury. Monica found her seat by the window, placing her handbag beneath the seat in front of her. The space around her was a stark contrast to the bustling terminal, a reminder of the disparity she had often encountered in life. A flight attendant appeared, her name tag reading Jenna. Her smile was polite, but lacked warmth. "Champagne or water?" she asked, her tone clipped. "Water, please," Monica replied. As Jenna handed her the glass, a few drops spilled onto Monica's tray table. "Oops," Jenna said, her smile tight. "Turbulence already." Monica dabbed at the spill with a napkin, her expression serene. She thanked Jenna and returned to her notebook, her pen resuming its steady rhythm. Jenna moved on, her demeanor unchanged, but Monica noticed the tension in her movements. A witness and coach. In the economy section, James Parker watched the scene unfold. A young man in his late 20s, James was dressed casually in a hoodie and jeans. He had a clear view of Monica's interactions and the subtle ways she was being dismissed. James recognized the signs, the fleeting smirks, the indifferent tones, the barely concealed microaggressions. He had experienced them himself as a black man navigating corporate America. But something about Monica's poise struck a chord with him. She wasn't just enduring, she was transcending. James pulled out his phone, discreetly recording the scene. He didn't know who Monica was, but he felt compelled to document the injustice. He wasn't sure what he would do with the footage, but he knew Monica's story deserved to be told. As the plane prepared for takeoff, Monica gazed out the window, her reflection a reminder of her journey. They didn't know who she was or the power she wielded. But soon, they would. This was only the beginning. The storm beneath the calm. The aircraft reached cruising altitude, and the cabin settled into a hushed rhythm. Monica leaned back in her plush first-class seat, her eyes gazing out at the endless stretch of clouds. From the outside, she seemed composed, but inside, her mind worked tirelessly. The events leading to this moment weren't just about the quiet slights or dismissive tones she'd faced today. They were echoes of a lifetime of fighting to be seen, heard, and respected. Her thoughts drifted to the past, to a younger version of herself standing in her family's small Livas apartment. The cramped space was filled with the scent of jollof rice simmering on the stove, her mother's soft humming, and the steady whir of an old fan struggling against the Nigerian heat. Her father, a schoolteacher, had always told her, "Monica, your mind is your greatest weapon. Use it to build the world you want to see." It was advice she had clung to like a lifeline through every challenge, every hurdle, and every moment of doubt. Her parents had sacrificed so much to ensure she had opportunities that they could only dream of. Those sacrifices had fueled her relentless drive to excel, to shatter barriers, and to prove that her place at the table wasn't just earned, it was inevitable. The subtle games of the elite. Back in the present, Monica's quiet moment was interrupted by the arrival of the in-flight meal service. Jenna, the flight attendant, approached her row with the same polished yet detached professionalism. The tray of meals she carried wobbled slightly as she stopped at Monica's seat, her smile strained. "Beef or vegetarian pasta?" Jenna asked, her tone lacking the warmth she had offered to the other passengers. "Vegetarian, please," Monica responded, her voice steady. Jenna handed over the tray, her fingers brushing Monica's hand in a fleeting moment of contact. There was no apology for the slight mess left on Monica's table as Jenna quickly moved on. Monica adjusted the tray herself, straightening the cutlery and wiping the surface clean with a napkin from her handbag. These small inconveniences were nothing new. Tiny, deliberate acts that said more about the giver than the receiver. As she ate in silence, Monica couldn't help but notice the energy in the cabin. Across the aisle, a sharply dressed man tapped away on his laptop, his Bluetooth earpiece flashing as he spoke in low tones about stock options and quarterly projections. A few rows ahead, a middle-aged couple whispered about their upcoming Mediterranean cruise, their laughter spilling into the air like a subtle reminder of their privilege. But what struck Monica most wasn't the conversations or the luxury surrounding her. It was the subtle undercurrent of unease she often felt in spaces like this. She had become a master at reading body language, at noticing the averted gazes, the quick exchanges of glances, and the unspoken questions that hung in the air. Does she belong here? The eyes in the crowd. James Parker, seated in the economy section, couldn't take his eyes off Monica. From the moment she had stepped onto the plane, her presence had captivated him. She moved with a confidence that seemed unshakable, even in the face of what he recognized as subtle mistreatment. James had seen it all before. As a marketing manager for a mid-level company, he often found himself being the only black person in boardrooms filled with suits who underestimated him. He knew the sting of microaggressions, the quiet ridicule masked behind polite smiles, and the assumptions made about his abilities before he even spoke a word. But something about Monica stirred something deeper in him, a quiet rage mixed with admiration. She wasn't just enduring the treatment. She was rising above it, every slight strengthening the invisible armor she wore. It made James want to act, to speak up for her, but he hesitated. What could he do in the middle of a flight, surrounded by strangers? Instead, he pulled out his phone and began typing furiously in his notes app. He documented everything he'd witnessed, from the dismissive gate agents to Jenna's cold demeanor. He didn't know what he would do with the information, but he felt a need to preserve her story, a testament to the quiet injustices she faced with dignity. A subtle shift in the air. As the meal service ended and the cabin lights dimmed, Monica closed her eyes, hoping for a moment of rest. But her peace was short-lived. Jenna returned, this time with a clipboard in hand, her demeanor more formal than before. "Ms. Adewale," she said, her voice still clipped but now carrying a hint of apprehension. Monica opened her eyes, meeting Jenna's gaze with calm curiosity. "Yes. We're conducting a routine survey of our first-class passengers. Would you mind providing feedback on your experience so far?" The question seemed innocuous, but Monica could feel the tension behind it. Jenna's posture was stiff, her smile forced. It wasn't about the survey, it was about control. The offer wasn't a gesture of service. It was a subtle test, a way to gauge Monica's response to the treatment she had endured. Monica smiled softly, taking the clipboard. "Of course," she said, her voice steady. As Jenna walked away, Monica's pen hovered over the page. The questions were generic, asking about service quality, comfort, and overall satisfaction. Monica considered her answers carefully, knowing that her words carried weight. She wrote with deliberate precision, choosing to highlight the professionalism of certain staff members while noting areas where improvement was needed. It wasn't about vengeance. It was about holding people accountable. Seeds of change. Meanwhile, James had finished his notes and was scrolling through his phone, debating whether to share what he had written. He considered tweeting about the experience or emailing the airline, but something told him to wait. This moment wasn't just about the injustice he'd witnessed. It was about how Monica would choose to handle it. As the flight continued, James watched as Monica handed the clipboard back to Jenna, her expression calm but unreadable. Jenna accepted it with a tight-lipped smile, her fingers gripping the board a little too tightly. It was clear she wasn't comfortable under Monica's composed scrutiny. What Jenna didn't realize was that Monica had faced far greater challenges than a dismissive flight attendant. Her journey to this moment had been filled with obstacles, from being overlooked in boardrooms to fighting for her voice to be heard in spaces dominated by people who doubted her capabilities. But Monica had never let those moments define her. Instead, she used them as fuel for her ambition, a reminder of why her presence in these spaces was not just important, it was necessary. As the plane flew through the night sky, Monica leaned back in her seat, her notebook resting on her lap. Her pen moved across the page with steady strokes, capturing the thoughts and emotions whirling within her. She wasn't just documenting her journey, she was preparing for what lay ahead. Because what the world didn't know yet, what the gate agents, Jenna, and even James couldn't fully understand, was that Monica Adewale wasn't just another passenger. She was a force of nature, quietly gathering strength for the storm she was about to unleash. Strength in silence. The cabin lights dimmed, casting a soft glow over the first-class section as the plane glided through the night sky. Monica gazed out of the small window, her reflection faintly visible against the dark backdrop of the clouds. Her thoughts were like a turbulent sea beneath her calm exterior. Memories of a lifetime of quiet endurance, triumphs hard-earned, and the many battles fought to reach this point. Her pen moved effortlessly across the pages of her leather-bound notebook, capturing not only the events of the day, but also her reflections on what they signified. To anyone else, these moments might have seemed trivial. Dismissive glances, condescending tones, careless gestures. But Monica knew better. These small, calculated acts were part of a broader pattern, a reminder of how people like her were often underestimated, belittled, or ignored. She paused, her pen hovering over the page. What would her younger self have thought of this moment? Would the girl who used to study by candlelight in Lagos, surrounded by the hum of crickets and the distant chatter of neighbors, have imagined herself here, flying first class as the CEO of a multinational corporation? That girl had dreamed of changing the world, of proving to everyone that she belonged in spaces they tried to exclude her from. And here she was, doing just that. But Monica's reflection wasn't just about the past. It was about the future she was building, not just for herself, but for every little girl who might look up to her and see what was possible. She knew that her presence in this seat wasn't just about personal success. It was about representation, about being a symbol of what could be achieved despite the odds. A conversation sparks. Meanwhile, in the economy section, James Parker sat hunched over his phone. He had been silently observing Monica for hours, his admiration for her growing with every interaction he witnessed. Her composure, her quiet dignity in the face of subtle mistreatment. It all spoke to a strength he both respected and related to. James opened his notes app again, scrolling through the detailed account he had written. The smirks from the gate agents, Jenna's dismissive attitude, the random screening. It was all there. He wanted to do something with it, to speak out against the treatment she had endured. But how? Lost in thought, James didn't notice the older man seated next to him until the man spoke. "You've been typing away for a while there, writing a novel," the man joked, his tone light but curious. James glanced up, startled. The man's kind eyes and graying beard gave him the appearance of someone who had seen enough of life to understand its complexities. "Not exactly," James replied with a small chuckle. He hesitated, then decided to share a bit. "I've been watching something unfold up there in first class. A woman, black, successful, clearly out of place in the minds of some people, has been dealing with, well, you know." The man's brow furrowed slightly. "I do know," he said after a moment. "Seen it myself more times than I care to count. What are you planning to do about it?" James leaned back in his seat, letting out a slow breath. "I'm not sure. I've documented everything, but I don't know if it'll make a difference." The man nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes, it's not just about making a difference in the moment. It's about creating a record, a trail that others can follow. You might not change what's happening right now, but you might inspire someone else to stand up when it's their turn." A surprising revelation. Back in first class, Monica closed her notebook and placed it carefully in her bag. She adjusted her scarf, the intricate patterns catching the soft light, and leaned back in her seat. As she reached for the small reading light, a voice startled her. "Excuse me, are you Monica Adwell?" Monica turned to see the sharply dressed man who had been seated a few rows ahead. His dark suit and perfectly styled hair spoke of someone accustomed to the world of power and privilege, yet there was an unexpected softness in his expression. "I am," Monica replied, her tone polite but guarded. The man extended a hand. "My name is Daniel Carter. I work for Vanguard Enterprises. I couldn't help but notice. Well, you're hard to miss. Your poise, your confidence, it's inspiring." Monica raised an eyebrow, unsure of where the conversation was headed. "Thank you," she said simply. Daniel hesitated, then continued. "I read an article about you recently. Your appointment as CEO. It's groundbreaking. I just wanted to say congratulations. And, if you don't mind me saying, it's about time we see more leaders like you in the industry." Monica's guarded expression softened slightly. She had grown used to compliments that carried ulterior motives, but something about Daniel's tone felt genuine. "Thank you," she said again, this time with a small smile. As Daniel returned to his seat, Monica couldn't help but reflect on the interaction. It was a reminder that even in spaces where she often felt isolated, there were allies, people who recognized her achievements and respected her for them. A catalyst for action. In the coach section, James's conversation with the older man had sparked an idea. He decided to draft an email to the airline, detailing what he had witnessed. His fingers flew across the screen as he recounted the events, his words precise and impassioned. He included every detail he could remember, from Lisa and Mike's behavior at check-in to Jenna's cold treatment during the flight. As he wrote, James felt a sense of purpose he hadn't experienced in a long time. This wasn't just about Monica. It was about everyone who had ever been treated as less than, simply because of who they were. Before sending the email, James paused, rereading his words. He decided to add a final note. "I don't know who this woman is, but her strength in the face of disrespect was remarkable. If she represents the kind of passengers you attract, your airline should be honored to have her. I hope you take these observations seriously, not just as feedback, but as an opportunity to reflect and improve." The ripple effect. As the plane began its descent, the cabin stirred with activity. Monica packed away her belongings, her expression calm but purposeful. She could feel the weight of the journey ahead, but she was ready for it. In economy, James hit send on his email just as the announcement to prepare for landing came over the intercom. He leaned back in his seat, a sense of quiet satisfaction washing over him. He didn't know if his words would make a difference, but at least he had tried. As the wheels touched down on the runway, Monica gazed out at the city lights below. This was just another flight, another journey in a long series of them. But something about this one felt different. The subtle shifts, the quiet acts of resistance, and the unexpected connections. It all pointed to something greater. Because Monica knew one thing for certain. The world was watching and change was coming. Whether they were ready for it or not, the storm had already begun. The reveal. The plane taxied to the gate, the familiar bumps of the runway signaling the end of the flight. Monica sat quietly, watching the other passengers stir with impatience, gathering their belongings, and glancing at their phones. She took her time, placing her notebook into her handbag and adjusting the scarf draped elegantly around her shoulders. For her, there was no rush. This moment was a calm before the storm she had been preparing for. As the plane came to a stop, the first-class cabin doors opened, and Jenna, the flight attendant who had been less than accommodating, stepped forward with her practiced smile. "Thank you for flying with us," she said, her voice carrying the same rehearsed politeness that had marked every interaction. Monica rose gracefully, her movements measured. She thanked Jenna with a slight nod, her voice calm but firm. There was no trace of resentment, only the poise of someone who knew their worth. Jenna hesitated, almost as if she expected Monica to say more, but when she didn't, Jenna stepped aside, letting her pass. A familiar face. As Monica entered the terminal, her phone buzzed with notifications, but she ignored them for now. The crisp, air-conditioned corridor stretched ahead, lined with bustling travelers and glowing advertisements. She moved with her usual composure, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. At the baggage claim, she spotted a familiar face waiting for her. Julia Hernandez, her executive assistant, stood with a wide smile, holding a tablet and a steaming cup of coffee. Julia was a sharp, efficient woman in her mid-30s, someone Monica trusted implicitly. "Welcome back, Monica," Julia said warmly, handing her the coffee. "Thank you, Julia," Monica replied, taking the cup. "How's everything on the ground?" Julia grinned. "As smooth as it can be, given the circumstances. The press is already buzzing about your arrival. The team has prepped a statement in case we need to address anything directly, but for now, we're sticking to the plan." Monica nodded, her expression thoughtful. She had expected the scrutiny that came with her new role, but she hadn't anticipated how quickly the spotlight would intensify. Still, she was ready. "Good. Let's keep it that way for now." As they walked toward the car waiting outside, Julia hesitated, then asked, "Was the flight all right?" Monica's lips curved into a faint smile. It was enlightening. The email that changed everything. Unbeknownst to Monica, James Parker was also navigating the terminal, his mind racing with the events of the flight. He had just received a notification that his email to the airline had been forwarded to their customer relations team. While he wasn't sure what, if anything, would come of it, he felt a sense of satisfaction knowing he had taken action. But James wasn't done. As he scrolled through his photos, he found the short video he had recorded of Monica's interaction with the gate agents. It wasn't long, but it captured enough. The dismissive looks, the whispered remarks, and Monica's dignified response. He debated for a moment before uploading it to his social media account with a caption. "Watched this incredible woman handle microaggressions with more grace than most people could muster. We need to do better. #representation matters. #fly with dignity." James hesitated before hitting post. He didn't know Monica's full story, but he felt compelled to amplify what he had witnessed. Once he clicked the button, the video began its journey into the digital world, where it would soon take on a life of its own. A meeting of minds. By the time Monica reached her hotel, the lobby was abuzz with activity. Executives in tailored suits mingled, their voices low and purposeful. The annual Leadership Summit was one of the most high-profile events in the corporate world, bringing together CEOs, thought leaders, and innovators from around the globe. Monica checked in and made her way to the suite reserved for her. The room was immaculate, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a stunning view of the city skyline. As she set down her belongings, Julia entered with a stack of briefing documents. "The keynote is tomorrow morning," Julia said, handing Monica a folder. "Your panel is at noon, and there's a networking dinner in the evening." Monica nodded, flipping through the folder. "And the press?" "Mostly positive coverage so far," Julia replied. "But there's one thing you should see." She handed Monica her phone, the screen displaying a trending video. Monica's eyebrows raised as she watched the footage James had uploaded. It showed her calm yet commanding presence at the gate and the less-than-professional behavior of the airline staff. The caption and comments painted her as a hero of quiet resilience, someone who inspired others by refusing to let small-mindedness diminish her. "It's going viral," Julia said, her voice tinged with amusement. "People are calling you a role model for grace under pressure." Monica handed the phone back, her expression thoughtful. "Interesting. An unlikely ally." Meanwhile, James sat in his hotel room, surprised at the response his post had garnered. Comments flooded in, many praising Monica's composure and calling out the airline for its unprofessionalism. Some people shared their own experiences of discrimination and microaggressions, while others called for accountability. James hadn't expected the video to gain so much traction, but he was glad it had. He hoped Monica would see it and know that her quiet strength had resonated with so many. As he scrolled through the responses, his phone buzzed with a notification. It was a direct message from an unfamiliar account. He opened it to find a short, gracious note. "Thank you for amplifying what happened today. Strength doesn't go unnoticed. Let's connect soon. M.A." James stared at the message, a smile spreading across his face. He didn't know how she had found him so quickly, but he was glad she had. This was just the beginning of a connection he felt would be significant. Stepping into the spotlight. The next morning, Monica stood backstage, her microphone clipped to her blazer. The conference hall was packed, the anticipation palpable. This keynote wasn't just about her. It was about the millions of people who saw her as a symbol of hope and progress. As she walked onto the stage, the applause was deafening. Monica took her place at the podium, her eyes scanning the crowd. She didn't see individuals. She saw potential, the power of collective change. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady. "Today, I stand here not just as a CEO, but as a representative of what's possible when determination meets opportunity. Our world is changing, and it's up to us to ensure that change is inclusive, empowering, and just." Her words flowed with the ease of someone who had spent a lifetime preparing for this moment. She spoke of her journey, of the challenges she had faced, and of the responsibility that came with leadership. And as she spoke, the room hung on her every word. Because Monica Adewale wasn't just a leader. She was a force of nature, and the world was finally beginning to understand who she truly was. A seat at the table. The glow of the stage lights faded as Monica stepped down from the podium. The audience's standing ovation echoed in her ears, but she remained poised, her face calm and her movements deliberate. She had delivered one of the most significant speeches of her career, yet her mind was already turning to what lay ahead. The keynote had been the easy part. The real work was only beginning. As she exited the conference hall, Julia met her with a grin and a clipboard in hand. "That was incredible," she said, falling into step beside Monica. "You've set the tone for the rest of the summit." Monica nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Thank you, Julia. What's next?" Julia glanced at her clipboard. "You have a private luncheon with key industry leaders in about an hour. It's a small group, just the board members of Vanguard Enterprises and a few others. They've specifically requested you." Monica raised an eyebrow, but didn't comment. She was no stranger to these so-called intimate meetings, where power dynamics played out over carefully curated meals. She knew what to expect. Subtle probing, veiled skepticism, and a test of her ability to navigate the room. "Let's make sure the room is set before I arrive," Monica said. "And I'll need a quick update on the social media buzz before we go in." Julia nodded. "Of course. Also, the airline reached out. They want to apologize publicly for what happened yesterday." Monica paused, her gaze sharpening. "Interesting. Let's discuss that after the luncheon." The power lunch. The private dining room was sleek and modern, its glass walls offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. A long table was set with pristine white linens and elegant centerpieces. Around it sat some of the most influential people in the industry, their tailored suits and polished exteriors a testament to their success. Monica entered the room with the same quiet confidence she carried everywhere. The conversation at the table paused momentarily as all eyes turned to her. She took her seat at the head of the table, a position she had earned but one that still seemed to unsettle a few of the attendees. Daniel Carter, the executive who had approached her on the plane, offered a welcoming smile. "Monica, thank you for joining us. Your keynote this morning was truly inspiring." "Thank you, Daniel," Monica replied, her tone warm but measured. "It's an honor to be here." The luncheon began with polite small talk, the kind of surface-level conversation designed to put everyone at ease. But Monica knew it wouldn't last. She could feel the undercurrent of curiosity and doubt, people trying to assess whether she truly belonged in their circle. Halfway through the meal, the questions began. "Monica," one of the board members said, his tone friendly but probing, You've had an impressive career. But stepping into a role like this, as CEO of a major corporation, must come with unique challenges. How do you plan to address those? Monica set down her fork, her gaze steady. Challenges are a given in any leadership role, she began. But I found that the key to overcoming them lies in understanding your team, your mission, and your values. My approach will be the same as it has always been. Clear communication, strategic vision, and unwavering commitment to excellence. Her answer was met with nods and murmurs of approval, but she could see the wheels turning in their minds. They were testing her, measuring her against their expectations. Another executive chimed in, his tone more direct. And what about the perception of bias in industries like ours? Do you think your leadership will change how the public views companies like yours? Monica's lips curved into a faint smile. I think leadership, when executed with integrity and vision, naturally changes perceptions. It's not about being seen, it's about making an impact. And I intend to do both. The room fell quiet for a moment, her words hanging in the air. Monica could sense the subtle shift in their demeanor, respect mingling with a newfound understanding of who she was. The call for accountability. After the luncheon, Monica and Julia returned to the suite to prepare for the next event. Julia handed Monica a tablet with a flurry of updates. The video James posted is still gaining traction, Julia said. It's been shared over 50,000 times, and major media outlets are picking it up. The airline's PR team has reached out to request a meeting. Monica skimmed the headlines on the screen. Words like grace, discrimination, and accountability leaped out at her. The narrative wasn't just about her. It had become a broader conversation about bias and professionalism in the service industry. Do we know more about this James Parker? Monica asked. Julia nodded. He's a marketing manager based in Chicago. Mid-level position, but he seems sharp. His post struck a chord with people. Monica considered this for a moment. Reach out to him. Let's see if he's open to a conversation. Julia raised an eyebrow. Do you think he'll be a useful ally? I think anyone willing to stand up for what's right is worth listening to, Monica replied. A public statement. Later that evening, Monica sat at her desk, drafting a statement. She knew the world was watching, and her response needed to reflect not just her personal experience, but the larger issues it represented. She wrote with deliberate care, her words a blend of acknowledgement and resolve. The events of the past 24 hours have been a reminder of the biases that still exist in our society, but they have also shown me the power of grace, resilience, and community. I am grateful for those who have supported me and for the conversations this has sparked. Let this be a moment for all of us to reflect on how we can create a more inclusive, respectful world, whether we're in the boardroom, the cabin, or anywhere in between. Julia read over the draft and nodded. It's perfect. Monica sent the statement to her communications team with instructions to release it alongside an invitation for the airline to collaborate on diversity and sensitivity training for their staff. She wasn't interested in a simple apology. She wanted systemic change. A step toward change. As the day came to a close, Monica sat by the window, looking out at the city lights. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the countless obstacles she had overcome, and the people who had doubted her along the way. But she also thought about the allies she had found, people like James, who had seen her worth and chosen to amplify it. This wasn't just her fight. It was a collective effort. And while the road ahead was still long, Monica felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had a seat at the table now, and she intended to use it to open the door for others. Because change didn't happen overnight. It happened one conversation, one action, and one step at a time. And Monica was ready to lead the way. The catalyst for change. The dawn of a new day brought with it a sense of anticipation. Monica stood in front of the suite's full-length mirror, adjusting her scarf. The intricate patterns of gold and emerald seemed to shimmer as they caught the sunlight streaming through the window. Today wasn't just another day in her career. It was a turning point. Her keynote had set the stage. But the real impact would come from the conversations and actions that followed. The buzz around the viral video had grown overnight, with social media platforms flooded with discussions about discrimination, professionalism, and resilience. What had started as a quiet flight had now evolved into a movement that Monica was determined to harness for good. A meeting with James Parker. Julia had arranged a private meeting with James Parker that morning. Monica wanted to thank him in person for his courage and discuss how they could collaborate to amplify the message further. The conference room was sleek and modern, with panoramic windows offering a breathtaking view of the city. James arrived promptly, dressed in a sharp navy blazer that hinted at his meticulous nature. He looked slightly nervous but composed as he entered the room. "Mr. Parker," Monica greeted him with a warm smile, extending her hand. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you." James shook her hand, his grip firm. "The pleasure is mine, Ms. Adewale. I never imagined a single post could lead to this." Monica gestured for him to sit. "You saw something wrong and chose to act. That takes courage, especially in a world where it's easier to stay silent." James nodded, his gaze earnest. "I've been in similar situations myself. Seeing how you handled everything with such grace, it inspired me. I just wanted people to see what I saw." They spent the next hour discussing not just the flight, but the broader implications of bias in professional and public spaces. Monica listened intently as James shared his perspective, taking mental notes of his insights. By the end of their conversation, they had outlined a plan to collaborate on a series of public awareness campaigns aimed at promoting inclusivity and respect. As James prepared to leave, Monica stopped him. "You've been an ally in a moment when it mattered most. Thank you for standing up, not just for me, but for what's right." James smiled, a hint of pride in his expression. "Thank you for giving me a reason to." A press conference that changed the narrative. The airline had requested a formal meeting with Monica to issue a public apology, and she agreed, on the condition that it be a collaborative discussion rather than a performative gesture. The press conference was held in one of the city's most prestigious hotels, with reporters and cameras filling the room. Monica sat beside the airline's CEO, a polished man in his early 50s who looked distinctly uncomfortable. As the event began, he delivered a carefully worded apology, acknowledging the incident and committing to better training for staff. While his words were well rehearsed, the real focus was on Monica. When it was her turn to speak, Monica's calm yet commanding presence silenced the room. She began by addressing the airline's apology, thanking them for taking the first step, but emphasizing that true change required more than words. "This isn't just about a single flight or one individual's experience," Monica said, her voice steady and clear. "It's about the systems and mindsets that allow these behaviors to persist. It's about ensuring that everyone, regardless of their background, is treated with respect and dignity." She went on to announce her partnership with the airline to develop a comprehensive diversity and sensitivity training program, not just for their staff, but as a model for the industry at large. The room erupted in applause as Monica concluded her remarks, her vision resonating with everyone present. The ripple effect. As the days turned into weeks, the impact of Monica's actions began to unfold. The training program she co-developed with the airline became a benchmark for other companies, sparking similar initiatives across the corporate world. Conversations about bias, microaggressions, and inclusivity gained momentum, fueled by the viral video and Monica's public statements. James's social media post continued to circulate, with more people sharing their own stories of resilience and allyship. The partnership between Monica and James grew, with the two of them working together on campaigns, panels, and workshops. Their collaboration became a symbol of what could be achieved when individuals united for a common cause. A personal reflection. One evening, after a long day of meetings and interviews, Monica returned to her suite. She sat by the window, her notebook open on her lap. As she looked out at the city lights, she allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. The journey to this point had been anything but easy. There had been countless obstacles, moments of doubt, and instances where the weight of it all felt unbearable. But Monica knew that every challenge she had faced had shaped her into the leader she was today. She picked up her pen and began to write, her words flowing effortlessly. Strength isn't about never feeling fear or doubt. It's about choosing to stand tall despite them. It's about knowing your worth, even when others try to diminish it. And it's about using your voice, not just for yourself, but for those who can't speak up yet. The legacy of change. Monica closed her notebook and set it aside, a faint smile on her lips. The world was far from perfect, but she had taken a step, a small but significant step, toward creating the change she wanted to see. And she knew this was just the beginning. Her journey was a testament to the power of resilience, grace, and the unwavering belief that one person could make a difference. With every challenge she faced, Monica was reminded of the words her father had told her so many years ago. Your mind is your greatest weapon. Use it to build the world you want to see. Monica was building that world, one step at a time. And she wasn't doing it alone. With allies like James and the countless others who had been inspired by her story, she was paving the way for a future where everyone could find their seat at the table. The ripple expands. The days following Monica's press conference were a whirlwind. The training program she co-developed with the airline had sparked a movement, but its reach extended far beyond just the aviation industry. Other corporations began to take notice, issuing their own statements and pledging to implement similar initiatives. Monica received a steady stream of emails, calls, and messages, not just from industry leaders, but also from individuals who felt seen and inspired by her actions. Her story had become a symbol of quiet strength and resilience, a rallying cry for those who had long felt voiceless in their own battles against injustice. A letter that changed everything. One morning, as Monica reviewed her overflowing inbox, a message stood out. It was from a woman named Angela Okoro, a recent college graduate and the daughter of Nigerian immigrants. Angela's email was filled with gratitude and admiration, describing how Monica's actions had given her the courage to stand up against bias she faced during a recent job interview. "You've shown me that I don't have to shrink myself to fit into spaces where I belong," Angela wrote. "Because of you, I walked into my second interview with confidence, and I got the job. Thank you for showing me what's possible." Monica felt a lump in her throat as she read the email. It was a reminder of why she fought so hard, not just for her own success, but to pave the way for others like Angela. She saved the email, knowing it would serve as fuel during the inevitable challenges ahead. Building a legacy. Monica's influence grew, not just as a leader but as a symbol of change. Her partnership with James Parker flourished, and together they launched a global initiative called Voices of Change. The program created platforms for individuals to share their stories, fostering dialogue and understanding across industries and communities. Monica often spoke at events, sharing her experiences and the lessons she had learned. Her talks were more than inspirational. They were a call to action, urging others to reflect on their own biases and to use their positions of influence to create inclusive environments. But Monica didn't stop there. She knew that true change required systemic action. She began advocating for policy reforms, working with lawmakers and organizations to implement diversity, equity, and inclusion standards that could be enforced on a broader scale. A moment of reflection. Late one evening, Monica found herself alone in her office. The city skyline glittered outside the window, a testament to the endless possibilities she had once dreamed of. On her desk was a framed photograph of her parents, their smiles frozen in time. She thought of her father's words again. "Your mind is your greatest weapon. Use it to build the world you want to see." Monica realized she wasn't just building a world for herself. She was building it for countless others who deserved a chance to thrive. As she leaned back in her chair, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from James. The Voices of Change initiative has reached over 1 million participants worldwide. None of this would have been possible without your leadership. Thank you for inspiring us all. Monica smiled, her heart full. She replied, The work is just beginning. Together, we'll keep building a better future. The world takes notice. The impact of Monica's journey reached far and wide. Media outlets hailed her as a trailblazer, and her story was featured in documentaries, books, and articles. She was invited to the United Nations to speak about the importance of representation and inclusivity, her words leaving a lasting impression on leaders from around the globe. But for Monica, the accolades were secondary. Her true pride came from seeing the tangible changes her efforts had brought about: people finding their voices, organizations transforming their cultures, and the world taking steps toward a more equitable future. A new chapter. Years later, as Monica prepared to step down from her role as CEO to focus full-time on her advocacy work, she reflected on the flight that had sparked it all. What began as a single moment of microaggression had become the catalyst for a global movement. Monica knew she had turned adversity into an opportunity to create meaningful, lasting change. As she closed her office door for the last time, her heart was light. She had made her mark, but the story wasn't over. Monica knew that the seeds she had planted would continue to grow, nurtured by the countless people she had inspired. Because true leadership wasn't about holding power, it was about empowering others to rise. And Monica Adewale had done just that.